But if you say the wrong thing, someone's going to be knocking at your door, okay? Maybe they'll just delete it like Twitter people do here. Or maybe they'll come knocking at your door and tell you not to do it again. Or maybe they'll come knocking at your door and you won't be heard from again, okay? So it's totally different here than there. That's how Weibo works versus our Twitter. The government is taking off a lot of posts from a lot of people because a lot of these people are saying, hey, look, they're doing this, they're doing that. They locked us up. They took away my neighbor. They arrested a person on the street who didn't have on a mask. They're filming this stuff and they're putting it on Weibo, and the government is taking it down. But they can't take it down fast enough, and people see it. At first, they started arresting people, but so many are doing it, you can't put 1.4 billion people in jail, okay? So they're losing the fight of the hearts and minds of the Chinese people. They're using the Chinese vehicle to report the total bungling of this whole epidemic by the Chinese government. President Xi, who runs China, is a true dictator. Now, all you never Trumpers out there say, well, Trump's a dictator too. No, he's not. He was elected by the people. He does a lot of not-headed things, in my opinion, but he's not a dictator. He's a president. All presidents do what they want when they want for the most part. Okay, Trump is no different. He just beats his chest and puts it on Twitter, which has never been done before. Xi is a true dictator. It's his way or the highway. He has no enemies. He has no distractors. He used to, but they're all dead or in prison. And any potential enemies know the consequences if they confront Xi's leadership. He's the president for life. No one is ever going to threaten him again. Like I said, they're all dead or in prison, the opposition that he had. And you think to yourself, well, it's a communist country, so all people in that country are communist. That's not true. There are 90 million people in the People's Republic of China that belong to the Communist Party. But of a country of 1.4 billion, that's just 15%. Only 15% of the people in China belong to the Communist Party. But they hold the power. And you may think to yourself, well, the people just tolerate that totalitarian authority. They do. But the reason they do is because of the improved standard of living that they've gotten under this totalitarian regime. And they have. Back in the 70s, when China first opened up, when President Nixon met with Zhou Enlai and they opened up China, China was a country still full of starving people, okay? They were very poor. Basically an agrarian society. Yeah, over 1 billion people who all lived on farms, and the ones that lived in cities lived in squalor. Okay, it's not that way anymore. Are there poor people in China? Sure, just like there's poor people here. And they don't have the standard of living that we have. But compared to what they had, forget 50 years ago, or 40 or 30 or 20, compared to what most of them had 10 years ago, it's a vast improvement. And that's how people look at things, okay? People don't say, why, I had this today and I'm going to have no more than that tomorrow. Most don't like that. Okay, I have this today, I'm going to have something less than that tomorrow. Nobody likes that. Even if you're well off today. If you're well off today, but know you're just going to be pretty well off tomorrow, nobody accepts that. But if today you live in a house that has heat and you get 2 full meals a day, but tomorrow you're going to live in a house with 3 more rooms than the old house, and you get 3 meals a day, that's better. If by the next 5 years you now can own a car, that's better. If in the next 5 years you can now go on holiday in someplace other than China, that's better. The standard of living continues to improve exponentially for the vast majority of Chinese people. That's why they tolerate that totalitarian regime, and they will continue to tolerate it as long as the standard of living increases. It's not happening right now, okay? While this will continue as long as the prosperity continues, I have a prediction. Most people, especially young people who have traveled abroad, 'cause that's what the Chinese do now. In fact, if you remember, the big problem with this coronavirus, this COVID-19, was it happened right along the time of Chinese New Year. And Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, if you will, they basically shut the country down for a week and a half, and people they travel abroad. They go on holiday. They have fun. It's one big party. In fact, I went to and it's all Asians, not just Chinese. I went to Vietnam one time, and we got there 2 days after Chinese New Year, and we had a meeting with a guy in Saigon, and he said, "Yeah, all right, I'll make it, but it's Chinese New Year. Remember that. Don't plan your stuff at Chinese New Year." I said, "No. Chinese New Year ended official Chinese New Year. The official celebration ended 2 days ago." He said, "Well, yeah, but we've been celebrating for a week and a half. Nobody comes to work for about 3 or 4 days after Chinese New Year's over." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because they're still drunk." It's basically 10 to 15 days of partying, and then you sober up, and then you come to work. So this is a big deal for these folks, okay? And they thought to themselves, wow, if all these people go someplace, this will turn into a pandemic. So that's when they shut it down, okay? But the young people go places. They travel a lot of places, including the United States and other Western countries. And what they do is they see how others live. And they come back, like anyone. If you ever come back from vacation, in the Midwest, a lot of people from the Midwest go south during the wintertime for vacation. They'll go to Cancun. They'll go to Punta Cana. They'll go to Puerto Rico. They'll go to Trinidad. They'll go to Cayman Islands, someplace where it's nice and warm, okay? Jamaica is another place. And what's the first thing you do when you come back from vacation? Wow, that was so nice. That was so wonderful. When I came back from Jamaica, I just wanted to relax and drink Red Stripe beer, okay? But that's what you do. You come back from vacation, you had a good time, and you yearn for what you saw. What can you do to make things more like where you were on vacation? Chinese people, when it comes to that, they're people. They're no different than you and I. And when they see the vast amounts of freedom that we have, and by we, I don't mean just the United States. I mean the whole West, the U.S., Western Europe, Japan, Korea, many of the South American countries, many of the Caribbean countries, okay, even Mexico. They have lots of freedoms in these countries, freedoms the Chinese do not have, okay? And they long for that. They yearn for that. They really do want some of that. Now, the Chinese people's standard of living has improved, okay? In fact, worldwide, most everyone's standard of living has improved. And again, this factoid I'm throwing at you, don't take the strong man's word for it. Never take my word for anything like that. Check it out yourself. Standard of living in this world for most people have increased. There are exceptions. Most of them are countries with horrible communist regimes, socialist regimes like Cuba, like Venezuela. Cuba's has not improved anything to speak of. And Venezuelans has gone downhill since the socialist regime of Hugo Chavez and Maduro has come into play. But for the most part, capitalism, with a safety net, maybe with a socialist type safety net in some respects, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, universal health care, those types of things, welfare, a social net so nobody starves, nobody truly goes hungry. If you really are sick, they kind of take care of you. Capitalism with that safety net included tends to be what people long for. It's worked for us here in the West. Our standard of living continues to increase, okay? So some form of that capitalism with a safety net, depending on the culture, depending on the society, depending on the people, works really well. Some of the Nordic countries like Sweden, okay? Why? In Sweden, everybody has socialized everything. Well, you can't do that here because We've got what, 350 million people? I think Sweden has less than 6 million. I mean, there's more people live in Los Angeles than live in Sweden, okay? And everybody has blonde hair, blue eyes with the same last name. So you can't say what works for these people works for these people. But some form of capitalism with a socialist or safety net tends to work for the West. It works very well. And it seems like everybody wants some version of that, okay? Again, that version changes depending on who you are, what your cultures are, et cetera, et cetera. But everybody wants what we have. Better food, better housing, better cars, leisure time. Who doesn't want leisure time? Who wants to work 80 hours a week? Travel. People like to go to other places, okay? People like to go where the culture is different, where the weather is different, where the cuisine is different. Nobody wants a government telling them what they must do all the time, okay? Now, the West is in a war with the East. And when I say the West, I mean the United States, Europe, Japan, South Korea, et al., okay? And when I say the East, I mean basically China, Russia, some of the other, Vietnam maybe, although they are much more open to capitalism, it seems like, within reason, than many of the other communist totalitarian countries. But everyone wants some version of the Western lifestyle because we are the envy of the world. We are. People want to be like us. People want to be like the West. They want the better food. They want the better housing. They want the better lifestyle, okay? They want the freedom to do what they want, more of what they want, when they want, and how they want to do it. Everyone wants better food. No one, remember in the old days, this poor Chinese boy lives on 2 bowls of rice. They don't do that anymore, okay? They got all kinds of stuff over there. Nobody wants the government telling them what to do. And the West, like I said, is in a war with the East. And I don't mean a firing the bullets war. I mean an ideological war. And that's kind of how wars are fought nowadays. Let me give you 2 examples of shots that have been fired over the bow. One a while back and has been going on for a while, and one very recently. Trump's trade war with China, okay? Negotiations are helping with the fight. I mean, for years, the Chinese stole our intellectual properties. They put huge tariffs on our stuff. They wouldn't let our stuff into their country unless the company that was coming in partnered with the Chinese company. Translation, had a joint venture with the state and stole their stuff, okay? That's all changing, and that was Trump's doing, okay? That's a positive thing. The other thing that I think is very positive, and it's not a law yet, but it's a bill, but Congressman Tim Kaine from Virginia, he's got that new war powers resolution that passed the Senate with a bipartisan vote. I think 8 Republicans voted with Kaine, and I'm no fan of Tim Kaine for the most part. But this bill, this war powers resolution, where it vastly limits what the president can do, that he has to go through Congress before he can start shooting, I think is a good thing. I think it's a wonderful thing. And if passed, it will help immensely, in my opinion. Now you thought to yourself, well, Strong, you've just contradicted yourself. You've said that we're at war with the East. But Tim Kaine wants to limit war with anybody, okay? Define war. War today is convincing others to see things your way. In fact, war has always been the reason. Why do you fight a war? Why does anybody fight a war anytime? Because you want to convince the other guy to see things your way, okay? And that used to mean crush them with battle axes or spears or bows and arrows or infantry or tanks or air power or fill in the blank. Bomb them into next year to convince them to see things your way. Translation, when you've killed enough of them, the ones that are left will surrender. That's kind of how things have always been done. One version of it or another. The only thing that changed are the weapons. To digress just a little bit, I've been reading the works of Alexandre Dumas, the famous French author, and I read the Count of Monte